On August 18, 2025, Washington, D.C. became the center of the world's attention. The city felt tense, with streets full of security vehicles and high-ranking officials moving about under the evening sky. Every corner of the American capital was filled with anticipation, because that day was not an ordinary day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Washington for a very important summit. His arrival was met with strict protocol and international media attention, showing how much hope was placed on his shoulders. The official motorcade took him to the meeting center, where the future of his country would be at stake. In the meeting room, Zelensky faced not only U.S. President Donald Trump, but also a coalition of European leaders: Keir Starmer from the UK, Emmanuel Macron from France, and Friedrich Merz from Germany. They stood united in their support for Ukraine, but remained cautious about America's agenda. Each leader brought national interests and political pressure from their own countries, creating a complex dynamic at the negotiating table. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine continued without end. Recent Russian missile attacks in Kharkiv and Zaporizhzhia added to the suffering of civilians and highlighted the urgency of these peace talks. Every explosion in Zelensky's homeland was a real reminder that time was running out. In the high-pressure meeting, Zelensky had to balance the demands of his people, who wanted peace and justice, with the political reality of the U.S. government, which wanted to find a solution quickly. The negotiations were tough, with every word and decision potentially having a huge impact on Ukraine's future. The world watched with bated breath. Media from various countries reported every development, while millions of people waited for good news from these negotiations. Hope and anxiety mixed, because the outcome of this meeting could change the course of history, not only for Ukraine, but also for the global order. The outcome of this summit will echo for generations. The stakes were very high. Peace, security, and the future of Europe were on the line at the negotiating table in Washington that night. President Trump has laid out two clear conditions to end the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, two conditions that have caused big arguments all over the world. The first condition is that Ukraine must give Crimea to Russia, saying that area is part of Russia. The second condition is that Ukraine must give up its dream of joining NATO, the Western military group that Moscow has always seen as a direct threat. Trump sees these two conditions as practical steps that could quickly stop the fighting and bring peace. But in Kiev and across Europe, many see it as giving in to Russia's pressure and attacks, and ignoring the idea of national independence. Giving up Crimea would mean making Russia's takeover in 2014 seem right, an act that the world has always said was wrong and against international law. Also, not joining NATO would leave Ukraine outside the Western safety net, making the country open to future threats. Trump's way of doing things is a big change from what the United States used to do, which was to support Ukraine's independence and its land. Now it seems the main goal is to end the war as fast as possible, even if it hurts Ukraine's interests. For Ukraine, these demands feel more like a final warning than a peace offer. Many Ukrainian officials and citizens feel that agreeing to these conditions means giving up their country's future to what other countries want. The future of Ukraine's independence and safety is now in great danger, and the people of Ukraine are faced with a very hard choice: peace with tough conditions, or keep fighting for their independence. The world is watching closely, wondering if true peace can be reached without giving up important ideas like independence, fairness, and a country's right to decide its own future. Trump's peace plan was shaped by a secret meeting in Alaska with Putin. This meeting happened far from public view and was full of tough talks. In the frozen lands of Alaska, world leaders met to talk about the future of Ukraine and Eastern Europe. They hoped to find a way out of a long-standing problem. In this meeting, Russia reportedly offered important deals that many international watchers never thought possible. Diplomats traded papers and shook hands, a rare moment in a relationship usually full of tension. Putin was said to be willing to allow strong safety promises for Ukraine, like the protection NATO gives. But he still said no to Ukraine joining NATO fully. These promises would mean other countries would help protect Ukraine from outside threats, but still keep it separate from NATO itself. Also, there was talk about possibly freezing the fight along the current front lines. This would mean both sides stop fighting and stay where they are. The idea of trading land was also thought about, but the details are still unclear and risky. This change shows a new willingness to be flexible from Russia, something rarely seen in past talks. But behind the closed doors, the discussions were still heated and full of arguments. Even so, the Russian public's demands are still very high. They still want full control over the Donbas region and demand that Ukraine get rid of all its military. This strong talk keeps being heard in Russian media and official meetings. The gap between the private offers made in Alaska and the public stance announced in Moscow is very wide. This creates a feeling of distrust among everyone involved. Many people doubt the real intentions behind the deals offered. Ukraine remains very careful, remembering Russia's long history of broken promises. The Ukrainian government and people know that any deal must be watched closely and not just accepted. The details of any possible deal are still very uncertain, and the risk of it failing or going backward remains high. Many things could mess up this process, from political pressure at home to other countries getting involved. The Alaska summit might have opened the door to new talks, but the path to true peace is still long and full of challenges. The world is now watching to see if this small step will turn into a real breakthrough or just another chapter in global uncertainty. The Zelensky government is standing firm. Ukraine will not trade land for peace. Giving up Crimea or occupied lands would betray the sacrifices of thousands and encourage future aggression. Kiev insists on full territorial integrity and legally binding security guarantees, not empty promises. The return of deported Ukrainian children is a non-negotiable demand. For Ukraine, peace must respect its sovereignty and the suffering of its people. The human cost of compromise is just too high. European leaders have come to Washington to make sure Ukraine's fate isn't decided without its say. They're against giving up land, warning that rewarding aggression hurts international law and European safety. Even though they're open to other safety promises, they insist that any deal must be strong and truly stop future Russian attacks. Their united front aims to cool down Trump's deal-making approach and keep Western principles front and center. Europe's message is that peace should be fair, not just fast. The outcome of the war will shape the future of the democratic world. For regular Ukrainians, the talk about land is very personal. Many have lost their homes, loved ones, and hope of going back. Giving up land feels like erasing their sacrifices. Even those who really want peace are afraid that a deal that rewards bad actions will only bring a short break. The national agreement stays the same. The fight is for all of Ukraine's land. War tiredness is real, but the refusal to give up is also real. Any peace deal will be judged by whether it respects their toughness. The emotional weight of compromise is huge. Everyone wants peace, but the path is blocked by clashing ideas and deep mistrust. Ukraine wants its borders back. Russia wants security and for its gains to be recognized. Trust is hard to find. Past agreements have failed, and both sides doubt what the other really wants. As long as either side thinks it can get more by fighting, a compromise will be tough to reach. Lasting peace will need both sides to be worn out and strong promises. Until then, the war keeps going. The world is waiting for a breakthrough that just isn't happening. At the heart of the talks is Ukraine's safety. NATO membership versus other ways to keep them safe. NATO's Article 5 is the best way to guarantee safety, but Russia sees Ukraine joining NATO as a red line. Trump's plan suggests a strong agreement with Western powers to protect Ukraine, without them actually joining NATO. The question is, will these new promises be real, automatic, and last forever? The people of Ukraine are doubtful, remembering past promises that were broken. This discussion is more than just about an agreement. It's about trust and survival. The future of safety in Europe might depend on this compromise. As the summit wraps up, Ukraine's future is still up in the air. If Zelensky says no to Trump's terms, U.S. support might dry up, leaving Ukraine in a tough spot. A compromise could freeze the conflict, but it would mean giving up land and NATO dreams. Russia's part is still a big deal. Putin could mess up any deal or use the disagreements in the West to his advantage. The next few weeks will show if the U.S. pushes for a quick deal or listens to Europe's caution. The choices made now will decide Ukraine's future and Europe's safety for many years to come. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next.